Hello, Janelle.
Hi, Seidel.
I just want to say before we even get started, I love so much how can I just say this? I'm just gonna say this. We're both in our sound squarely. Like we come in and I'm like, hey, hey, baby. Like, and your response is so Pisces. It's like such a Pisces sound. It just like makes me so happy. It just
There
makes
are
me so.
there are no secrets between us, Seidel.
Oh, that is so true. There are not any secrets between us. I love it so much. Okay, Janelle, I just want to say thanks for spending some time with me today and talking to me about your experience working with me and being together and sharing this journey with other people because it's so important to share our journey with others and our experience, especially when it comes to something as intimate as our sound.
Absolutely. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for having me. And I not only think it's important to share our journey, but I also think it's really important to honor our guides and those who have led us on our journey. And you have done that for me in so many countless ways. So I'm just so excited to share.
Well, it was an absolute honor. Okay, so let's jump in and get started. This, like you've worked with me before, so I just want to premise that this was our second time working together.
Mhm.
And I, which to me is just even more. Do you know what I mean? You knew what you were getting into and
Totally.
you chose to come back.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, like share with me a little bit about the journey from when we finished the first round to right before we started the second round. What made you decide that you wanted to come back, you wanted to continue the journey? What was like the tipping point to like, I got to do this again?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think where the first time I worked with you, I had a very specific intention. Like there was a place that I wanted to be in business with my audience in terms of my notoriety in world. I was in a place where, I was running a business that was really dependent on the number of women that were attracted to me and the number of women that showed up for my lives and to my podcast and things like that. So the first time we worked together, it was very business oriented, where I was extremely focused on healing my voice for the purpose of being attractive. um, I think we definitely succeeded there to the point where like my clients have gone to you and said thank you for supporting her, because I it wasn't until her voice changed that they decided to work with me, right? And so that worked. I think at that point though, um I was not ready for the next kind of leap in my evolution, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so I took some time to process what we had done. And really, what ended up happening was I came to the realization that I actually needed to switch gears altogether in multiple ways in my life. So that meant changing the direction of my business, really significantly changing where my notoriety was going to come from, really away from kind of the business space and into another space, which we could talk about if you want to. But, and also this recognition of um, what do, excuse me, what do I really want, right? And I think for so long, my ego had been running the show. And I had built my business as a really big FU to a lot of people, um, who I felt had wronged me in my life. And so I just wanted to prove I could do it. But I think what you really helped me to do was to lean into my heart's actual desires, which I couldn't recognize because I had been so used to my ego running the show for so long.
Yeah.
And I was like, what my ego wants is what I want.
Mhm.
want, right? Like I couldn't distinguish between the two. And so I think when I realized, uh-oh, like this is falling apart, like what I built is actually not at all what I want, and I'm gonna need to change my life significantly. I was like, oh no, I can't do this without Seidel. I was like, I need to call her up like this. I'm gonna need some help.
You know, I really appreciate you sharing that. And it's so vulnerable to share. And I think that so many of us live in ego and we mistake it for our heart because it's been a desire that we've wanted for so long that we just think, "Oh no, this is it. Like this is our ultimate desire." But when things come to a head and you
Mhm.
really realize that they're not working anymore, it requires a hard, deep look inside
Yeah.
of ourselves. And that's not always the easiest thing to do.
It's so true. And I think for me, what happened was I needed to own up to the fact that everything that I had built was out of revenge. And
Ouch.
yeah, yeah. And so by the time I had pretty much gotten all the revenge I thought I needed to get, I was just like, okay, so do I like this? Right? Like the thing that I've been working towards and honestly sacrificing a lot towards and sacrificing some
Yeah.
really tender moments of my life, right? Like moments where I'm pregnant and breastfeeding and birthing children. Like it was very tender moments of my life where I was building something um, that wasn't in my best interest. And so I just I mean, my only regret now is that I didn't find you sooner and start working with you sooner. I'm like, oh, that would have been nice to have like a year or two of that time back.
It was perfect timing. It really is like you had all of the growth that you needed to have. You had all the experience that were supporting you and choosing a new route and while I understand where you're coming from because I felt those same feelings before, I do think it's important to remember that we're exactly where we were on our journey. Our past journey is exactly where we needed to be, and our current space is exactly the right place for us.
Yeah,
So I really love that. Okay, so I want to ask you this question. It's kind of reflecting back to the first time, comparing the first time to the second time just a little bit. So the first time, um, we worked together, there was some like, digging into the feelings. And that was like not the, you're already shaking your head, like not the super funnest thing to do. Did you have any concerns as you,
feelings are coming up. Are you seeing my eyes water? I'm about to cry about feeling my feelings.
did you have like any concerns or what was like the biggest thing at the front of your mind as you're like, hey, I'm going to sign up for this and I know I'm about to embark on something that's it's gonna, yes, create the change that I know that I need, but it's also gonna bring stuff up. Did you have any thoughts? Did you have concerns about addressing feelings again like you did maybe the first time, or was it something different? Tell me about that experience.
For sure. So, the first time I knew it was something I needed, and I also knew it wasn't going to be fun, right? Like, it's one of those things. I don't know if anyone else is like me, but I really like to be super comfortable. I don't enjoy like intentional discomfort, right? And so for me, feeling my feelings and, engaging in the coaching was kind of like me signing up to run like a half marathon. Like, it's not that fun. I'm not a runner. Like, this is just not like, but I knew that it was something that I needed to do So I was like, okay, like this, what I am really good at doing is I'm really good at doing things that are uncomfortable for the purpose of something else, of a good goal. I am really good at that. So I signed up and I did
I
it.
kind of like I kind of want to go,
Yeah.
okay, I can do this. Like that's
Like
kind
I'm
of the
gonna,
feeling that I have in my body as you describe that. It's like, okay, I'm gripping everything. I'm like so like positioning my feet. I'm gonna get ready. I'm bracing. Brace for impact is kind of what it
right.
feels like.
It's like I know it's like childbirth. Like you're just like I know it's gonna hurt, but I'm having this baby. Okay,
Okay.
that was it.
Wait, did we just compare working with me to childbirth?
The result, though, aren't you glad you had me on?
I couldn't be happier. I think that's the best thing anyone has ever said. What are your biggest concerns? That this is gonna hurt like childbirth.
Yeah, it wasn't as bad. I can say that. It's not nearly as painful or nearly as much work.
Oh, that makes me feel better.
Yes.
What made the journey easier? Because it is hard. Like I will admit, like I know I take people through this path, right? What made it easier for you to do the hard, to step into that place where we're digging deep?
Seidel, I really want to use an expletive right now.
I don't know why you would say that. I've
I know.
never done that.
No, me? I'm on clutch wrap her. um, Seidel, what made me want, so the question was, what made it not that hard? Is that what you're
Yeah,
asking
yeah.
me?
What made it a little easier to muscle through?
You know, you are such a gentle guide. And I think the entire time you just, it, I mean, you just held me and it was very safe. And it was you always reminded me like why we're doing what we're doing. And you were very good at using my motivators
Mm,
and weaving them into the conversation. And so you would show me, how my moon astrologically was trining these different aspects of my chart that held, the things that I knew that I desired, right?
yeah,
And so I think that piece of it was really important. And that piece made it so that um it just made it so worthwhile. And the fact of the matter is that even though we're making jokes, like doing emotional healing is not actually that hard, like it's not childbirth or running a marathon, right? Like we've all done harder things, right? And so I think it's just our ego, right? Like our ego
yeah,
does not want to be uncomfortable
yep,
at all costs. And
yep,
so I think that my hesitation was this blown out of proportion, like emotions are so hard. But actually, and I know that there's data behind this, that when you lean into feeling an emotion, it disappears after 90 seconds and then you don't feel
yes,
it anymore. Like
right,
we actually chemically can't feel emotions in our body for more than 90 seconds.
yep,
But if we shove them down, then we're stuck with them and they manifest in different ways and then we can carry
yep,
them around for years, right? So I think just learning that, leaning into that. And then the second time, what I think made it so much easier was by the second time I worked with you, I had really accepted the process and I had really accepted and I had realized, I think I saw after the first time that we worked together how supportive that was. And Vital, also, you have to remember too that I had never experienced a safe and supportive place
yeah.
to be vulnerable. I mean,
I
like,
just want to cry.
actually, I know, isn't that sad? Like, actually, never. And so I think, no wonder I was blowing this out of proportion and afraid. Like, I think that there are probably people in your audience who maybe if they had, a super intuitive and emotionally connected mother, or if they have, sisters or friendships where, where they feel very safe and really held, you know, for them, it might not be a big deal, right?
Right.
But for me, I don't have that relationship um, in my life from like no one has taken that almost that maternal role in my life, um, and so I didn't know that it was possible. I think.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. And like as you're just sharing all of this, the things that I just keep thinking over and over is like oftentimes, especially with emotions, people will say, it's not that big of a deal. I'm making it bigger than it needs to be, right?
Right. Yeah.
And what we do then is we just invalidate all of
Mhm.
our feelings.
Well,
And
and I did that a lot. Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, and I remember even I've been doing that for years. Even, I mean, I've had other coaches and other therapists and people tell me, like, because I would always say, but I haven't really been through trauma. Like, I didn't experience this specific type of trauma.
Right.
So therefore, what I went through wasn't a big deal. And I mean, I had a conversation over Christmas break with my family where my parents continued to insist that the trauma that me and my siblings had experienced was not a big deal. And, you know, that's what was told to me. I mean,
Yep.
this is like still being told to me.
Yep.
So when you hear something for 30 years, right? That's the belief system that's ingrained into your body. And so I know that I said that a lot and I super invalidated it. And that was the way that I was pushing down my feelings and pushing
Yep.
away what I had been through. And really, in a sense, continuing to berate myself and call myself weak and call myself inept, and just be really, really unkind to myself.
Yeah, exactly. And the moment our experiences it our experiences are invalidated is when they don't become real. And then when we take that and we validate, no, this actually was hard, regardless of how big or small it might seem to someone else. It was
Yeah.
it's big to me. And the moment we do that, that's when we it becomes a real experience to us, and that's when we really feel heard by ourselves, and
Mhm.
when we feel understood, and that's when the tipping point happens and we can really create massive and quick healing in our lives. And that's what happened for you.
Well, and I think too that as long as you keep insisting that something isn't a big deal. Like, even something, I mean, have you heard? Okay, so there's this storybook about a dragon that keeps growing, but they ignore it. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't.
There's this storybook, and I don't even remember the title, so I apologize if this makes no sense to your audience. But there's a story about a dragon in a house, and the little boy says there's a dragon, and the mom's like, no, it's not there. They gaslight him, they make him, appear crazy. Well, the dragon is just like eating everything, so it keeps growing and growing and growing until literally, like, they have to move. They can't live in their house because the dragon, its arms and legs are like sticking out of the windows. And so it's like, even things that maybe at first are not a big deal, if they're ignored, become a big deal.
Yeah,
So these
exactly.
little t traumas that, I've experienced throughout my life and some big t traumas, but mostly little t traumas, if they're ignored, if they're invalidated, if they're gaslit, they will continue to grow, they'll continue to fester, and then all of a sudden, a paper cut turns into an amputation,
Yep.
because you didn't take care of it in the first place.
Yep, exactly. And validating just those little things creates a snowball effect. And even just like I saw working with you how it's not like we spent months, sessions where we're like, okay, let's validate this trauma. Okay, now
No,
let's
not at all.
validate this trauma. Like, let's just validate what you're experiencing in this moment.
Yeah.
And it created so much healing for the past and so much healing around you. And I that's my next question is like, where did you see the greatest change in your life as you stepped into this new level of healing?
You know, Seidel, I think that I would say the greatest change in my life, I mean, aside from what I really want to say is me, because I know that I am not the same and I am completely transformed in so many ways. Um, but I think in terms of actual categories of my life, I would say my business had the greatest transformation. I mean, it's literally completely, I mean, it's almost unrecognizable to what it was before. Before I was working, 20 to 25 hours a week, but I was on calls. I had a huge team. We were doing so many things that now looking back, I was spending so much money and making so much money, but not really being able to enjoy it because of all of the stress and the cortisol and the number of clients that I was managing. And it was just like, I think sometimes there are moments in life where we are forced to almost look up and ask ourselves, like, am I still running a race that I even want to be in?
Yeah.
You know? And
Yep.
I think something that really hit me was that I was running a race I didn't want to be in.
Yep.
And I was looking at the people above me, right? Like, so I was looking at the people who were ahead of me in business, like who has the $1 million, $3 million, $10 million businesses. Like I was looking at the Rachel Hollises and the Brooke Castillos and all of those who had their huge podcasts and had all the things going for them. And I was looking at their life, and they were all divorced. They were all wildly stressed,
Yeah.
right? They were all, I just like actually did not want their life. Right. And so I was like, why am I pushing for something, especially while my kids are little, you know? And then, as I transitioned to something completely different, I look at the people ahead of me and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited to be there. Like I cannot wait to get there. I can't wait to, be on that show or, write this book or whatever, right? And it's just like I feel like I there's just so much more joy and excitement and hope in my life. And I think I no longer feel in like, and now finally there are no aspects of my life where I am attempting to live up to other people's expectations.
Ah!
Which is a really big deal.
That's a huge deal. It is a monstrous deal, especially for women. Especially for women. We've just been, in this place where I don't always set up or trained or, you know, to create for everyone else, to provide in this way, for everyone else. And so, but the best way to provide for everyone else is to create that space for ourselves first.
Absolutely. Yes.
And so I love that. That's huge. And your business is totally different. It's totally different.
Yeah.
I remember just based on your chart, and the frequency of your business and the frequency of which we talked about, working together, what the frequency of your business is for, what the mission of it is,
Yeah.
and it's to care and support other women and also to care and support you.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
Well, no, I was gonna say that I had worked, so the first astrologer that I ever worked with, I remember her telling me because she read my chart and my chart is essentially the chart of a famous person, right? And so she had told me, she's like, Janelle, I don't say this to people. But she was like, you're gonna have millions of followers. And now, of course, I can see that it's Jupiter and Leo going into my 11th house, right? Like,
Right.
of course. But she goes, but it's not business. And she was like, I don't know what it is, but it's not business. And I remember feeling disappointed. I remember feeling, because every time you're doing anything, you want it to be the thing, right?
Yeah.
Um, and what I love, Seidel, is the fact that, I mean, it was 3 years later, after that moment working with you, I just working with you is how I discovered what it is, right? And so
Yeah.
it was like I had to go through two I guess packages with you, right? And we had to dig through all of the layers of ego that had wrapped itself around my heart, right? So that
Mhm.
I could actually see what was in there and then figure out like who am I? What am I actually being called for? Like,
Yeah.
where am I actually going? Right. And then to even have the wherewithal to be able to answer that call,
Yeah.
big
It's
deal.
yeah, it's a really big deal. How I want to talk for just a second about your relationship with your business, especially in like conjunction with this cared for and supported. Are you feeling less stressed in your business? Are you feeling more satisfied and more cared for, like your business cares for you in return?
I do. I think the way that I feel about my business is I feel very satisfied with what I've created, and I feel very like the boundaries that I've created within my business feel equitable, where I think for the first time ever, I feel like, okay, I finally feel like I'm being paid what I'm worth. I finally feel like I'm able to do the work that is nourishing to me the majority of the time,
Yeah.
right? Rather than feeling like, oh, I have to get this stuff done. And I remember the last time that I tried to force myself to do something in my business. So last fall, I was try as I might, I was trying to force myself to complete one last big project, and I literally like my eyes swelled up, and it was a project that involved me being visible, and I like there was nothing wrong with it. There was no pathogen, no nothing. It was literally just like I just can't go on camera because I look terrible, you know.
Right.
And then I would like not go on camera, and the next day I'd wake up fine, and then I'd reschedule the video, and then I would wake up with a swollen eye, and it just I realized that like I've finally gotten to a point where I am even allowing my body to tell me, you know, I got to the point where I was allowing and listening to my body when it told me enough was enough.
Like it's such a big deal. It's such a big deal. Like I think oftentimes we think, oh, my sound, and it's just, we're focusing on the moon and getting you into the sound of the moon, and so it's just expressing from our heart, but it really is expressing from so much more than that. It's that getting to that heart space allows us to hear what the other parts of our soul are expressing, and your body was saying, girl, no, we're not. This
Well,
is
and
not a good idea.
no. Well, something else that I want to say too is that, I think you talk so much about the sound because for you, it's like the window through which you diagnose us, right?
Yeah.
But I actually, as someone going through, for me, it was so much less about my sound. Like, my sound is a really huge component of it, and my sound is vast improved, and everyone likes my voice more, including myself, But I think for me, it it's a feature of what you do. I don't think it's the benefit. You know what I mean? Like,
Yes,
I'm
that
using
is
business language.
exactly. Yes, that's exactly it. That
Yeah.
is exactly it. It's not the benefit. It,
It's the
it's
cherry on top.
it's the cherry on top. It's
Yeah.
it's the un but you
It
can't
feels like
force
the
it.
proof, right? It feels
Yes,
like the
it's the
proof
proof.
that I've arrived.
Yes, exactly.
Like it's
That's
it's
right.
the proof that all of this happened.
Yes, exactly. It's the proof of the change because our voice really is the reflection. It really is the reflection and the expresser of our soul. And so
Yeah.
when we start listening to ourselves, when we really truly start expressing in alignment, our voice reflects that alignment by being in our natural sound. We can try to force it. We
Right.
can. We
Yes.
can. But it does not have the same impact.
It's the reflection.
It's the reflection. Yep, exactly. I would like, if you're okay with this, I'd like to talk for just a second about your the shift in your relationship with your husband.
Yeah, totally. You know, it's so interesting because I think so many of us, myself included, we love to blame everyone else for our problems. And we love to think that if only other people were different, for other circumstances were different, that we would feel differently. And I think it sounds so cliche. And, I really do think that there are some things where sometimes something external has to change, right? And I think that a lot of those things are legitimate. But when it came to my relationship with my husband, um, for all intents and purposes, he's a good guy, right? Um, but I was not getting what I needed in the relationship, and the communication was not there. And I think what I realized when I changed my voice and when I started, when I was working with you and I started really feeling my feelings, is I think I realized for the first time ever how much power I have over my circumstances. And I mean, I've even gone back. Like, I have gone back the other day, this came up. So, my husband, I absolutely love him and he is very romantic. But on our very, very first, like, well, second hangout, okay, first hangout slash date, um, I met his mom. We hung out with his brother for like 2 hours, who I like don't love. It was not fun.
Right.
And I think I was I mean, I don't know why it popped up in my head, but I think it popped up in my head the other day because I recognized this moment as setting the precedent for 8 years of marriage,
Right.
And
Right.
I'm like, this was my opportunity to put a stop to this, to it from the beginning, right? But I'm like, man, if I would have been in touch with my feelings, if I would have been Seidel's daughter, Bradley is so lucky. If I would have known Seidel in this capacity, and if I would have healed my heart and been feeling my feelings, I could have said so beautifully in the moment from my heart, in my sound, I could have said, you know what? I would really love to get to know you. I'm still getting to know you. I don't really want to meet your brother right now.
Oh my gosh. I just love that so much. And it's just so like it is loving.
Yes,
It's direct. It
yes,
is it's what you both want. Like you both want to get to know each other.
yes,
And like when you're dating, that's exactly what you want, you know?
right.
So it's like a joint outcome. It's just like it is so beautiful and so empowering for both of you, not just you, but for him as well.
Yeah. And so, so I'm like, if that would have happened, that would have set such a different tone for our relationship, for and I think what ended up, what really happened, not this alternative reality that I wish I would have created, but what really happened was I just continuously set myself aside and I would sit through dinner and I would sit through uncomfortable situations and I would sit through, okay, fine, you want to have a 2 hour conversation with your brother on our honeymoon, you know, like, yes. And I'm just like sitting here pretending like I'm interested, like, like, that's those are stupid examples, but
Right.
they reflect some
Yep.
really big things that ended up happening in our relationship later, where I'm like, man, what could have fixed this whole thing was me feeling my feelings and being in my sound. And the reason why I know that is because since working with you, I have chosen to be in my sound, even when I've really not wanted to be in my sound, even when I've really wanted to chop his head off. I have chosen to be in my heart space and to be in my Pisces sound. And it always disarms my husband, or anyone. It always, and not in a bad way, but
Yeah.
in a like, let's put the weapons down.
That's what the weapons
We're
done.
both Hispanic, so you can imagine how the fights go in our house. But it's like, let's put the weapons down. Let's talk about what we really want. What do we actually want to experience in our marriage and in this conversation? You know, and that was a tactic that you taught me. Here's what I want to experience in this conversation. Here's where I want us to go during this conversation, you know. And I mean, it has been life changing. And I really feel like it's something I will admit it's something that I'm still learning and I'm still
Yeah.
practicing. I mean,
Yeah.
even literally today, like having to like we did have a fight 2 hours ago, but it's one of those things where I can immediately redirect, and now I feel a lot of clarity
Mm.
about the conversation that I want to have and what I need in the relationship, and it's going to really transform, I think, the direction of our relationship.
I just, oh, I am just like bursting with joy for you in all these areas. And there's like a couple of things I want to like really emphasize. One is, and I don't know if you would have put it into words quite like this, but I think often, especially for my Pisces moon people, one
Mhm.
of the biggest drawbacks that they think for being in the Pisces sound is that they will sound weak.
Yeah.
If I'm
Mhm.
in that sound, I will sound weak. And then everybody else will walk all over me. So the one thing I don't want to sound is weak.
Mhm.
And the most powerful thing you can do is be in your Pisces sound. And that's actually the strongest thing you can do. And I love how you said that as you felt your feelings, as you stepped into you and stepped into your sound, it actually disarmed everyone. So it didn't leave you weak, it left everyone on an even playing field.
Absolutely. Well, you know, Settle, I think I don't I don't know if this is like a saying, but I'm going to make it one, because I've heard this before, that I've heard people say that the person who is the least likely to get into a street fight is a train killer, right? Like we don't see Navy SEALs walking around and picking bar fights, right? And so I think because I had felt at so many points in my life, because I had felt so weak and so defenseless, and so like I had felt um so out of control and so powerless in moments in my life, in particular, you know, as in childhood. I think that I really walked around with a chip on my shoulder, and I really felt like I had something to prove, and I really felt like I had to walk around not letting people walk all over me, right? um and I realize now how weak that is.
Mm.
Like, oh, like, you know, it's the short guys who walk around with a Napoleon complex, you know? And I think like I had to realize like if I'm really strong, if I really am this, you know, powerful woman that I would like to believe that I am, I don't have to walk around letting everyone know.
Yeah, I love that. I just love that so much. You're right. Like trained Navy SEALs, they don't pick fights. Like they're
No.
just like, that's probably really not a you don't want to hit me. That would be a really bad idea. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. Reminds me of like
No.
my Great Dane when a little dog comes yiping at her.
Right.
She's like, I I don't understand what you're doing. Like she's
Right.
just like this doesn't even make any sense to me.
It doesn't. It doesn't. And, you know, I think now knowing so much, I mean, astrology has just set me free in so many ways, because
Yeah.
now knowing what I know and knowing where my Mercury is and knowing where my Mars is, you know, I'm just like, I don't have anything to prove. Like I,
Exactly.
you know, and that's just,
Exactly.
it's so freeing, because then I really, because the truth of the matter is that I don't want to be this, um, standoffish person. I don't want to be this angry or aggressive person, which I really don't think I was with anyone except my husband. Right? But I think, and it was because that relationship was the most vulnerable, and it is the most,
Yes,
you know, it
exactly.
is the most vulnerable, you know.
Yeah,
And I also have
exactly.
Aries as my descendant, so you know that there's that too. But you know, I think creating a safe space for
Mm,
our relationship, for that vulnerability, and recognizing that I actually am safe, right? Recognizing that,
yeah.
my time with you was not an anomaly, but that actually when I am vulnerable, I actually am safe with my husband. I am safe with people in my family. I am safe because the truth of the matter is that I am safe.
Yes.
Like
Yes.
outside, right? Like God protects me. And so you created this safe space where I could walk in and feel safe. But the fact of the matter is that I am safe. And so I
Yes.
can walk out of that safe space and
Yep.
walk into my life and walk into even unsafe places with unsafe, emotionally unsafe people and
Yep.
still be in my sound, which is it's crazy town.
Girl, you just said it. I just love it. That is like that is my intention. That is my desire. That's exactly what happens. People come in, there's a safe space that's created so that they can experience themselves. They can experience their sound. They can experience the safety of being connected to themselves so that they can then go out into the world and express that, which is just my heart's greatest desire. And I'm just so, so happy, like over the moon. Can I say that without sounding too cheesy? Over the moon, excited for you that your life has just shifted so much. So, one last question. If someone was sitting on the fence and they were like, Janelle, I've heard about this Seidel girl, and I'm not sure if I should jump in and do this, what would your response be?
I truly, genuinely believe, and I'll be honest, I don't think I've ever said this about any healer ever. And so I want to be very careful with my words here. I legitimately, truly believe that every single person should work with you.
Wow.
Very legitimately. And I really don't feel like I'm like, are there any hesitations there? No, absolutely none. Like, literally none. It is my true belief that every single person should work with you. And I think the reason for that, the short answer to your question is if someone's listening to this and they're curious about working with you, they need to at least sign up for an assessment, right? Because there's something to that curiosity, um, and it's so easy to do, right? But with that being said, I think every so few people ever have the opportunity to experience the absolute safety and acceptance that I think you provide, Seidel. And I also believe that the only way that we can make the world a better place, improve, the craziness going on around us is by improving ourselves. And I've since learned that the way that we do that is by feeling our feelings, connecting to our heart space, and healing our relationship with ourselves, with God, with our family, with our spouses, with our kids, right? And I just think about like the effects of that. Um, I think that there are a lot of healers who do very specific things, right? But Seidel, I have never experienced a healer where it's like, oh no, my entire life is different, not just an aspect of my life. My entire life is different after working with you. And I think the other piece of it too, and I think probably the more like that's the true reason, right? Will that intimidate people? Perhaps. So now I'll give the shallow reason of why everyone should work with Seidel. And previously, because I know that the first time I hired you, I probably would have heard that first explanation and been like, yeah, whatever.
Thank you. Next.
Right. So the shallower, maybe more surface level, we can call it that, reason why I think everyone should work with you is because you become so much more attractive. And I mean that in every sense of the word. So I mean attractive in terms of like the way people perceive you as being more attractive, but also magnetic to like you I attract the things that I want, things that I actually want,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So much quicker, so much cleaner without as much of the drama or the overworking or the stress on my part, right? Like the attraction is so much simpler, it's um so much more accurate, right? um and and I mean, I just have seen such a difference with the people around me. Like, my kids can't get enough of it. My husband, I mean, he is just giddy in love with me even when I'm like, I want to kill you. You know? I mean, it's just like it's like, friendships, and just in a way that I've never experienced before. That attraction, potential clients. I mean, it's just like it's it's just a different level. So if I can't imagine why anyone would not.